From 1 to 100. This is a podcast where we talk about building your YouTube community from 1, that's you, to 100, so that you can make a living doing what you love. On this show, we talk about how to build a business as a YouTube creator in the passion economy. I'm your host, Heather Ramirez, and this is episode 11 of From 1 to 100. All right. Hello. Happy Tuesday. Happy July 20th. Welcome, everybody. Very excited for this episode. Have an awesome guest I can't wait for you guys to meet. And because I'm so excited, we're actually just going to jump right into it. So my guest for today, as you guys know, this is a work in progress, a thesis that I've been exploring, the passion economy, the differentiation between passion economy and creator economy and all of those things, paving a new path to success for YouTube creators. And one thing I thought about over the past week as I was thinking about our guest today was the intersection of YouTube content creation and small business owner. And I was like, oh, this person is a perfect example of that because if you want to be a successful online business owner, you could totally leverage YouTube and all the power and potential of it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you need, huge numbers in order to see success, especially if you are going to offer a premium product or service, which means that, the name of the show is called From 1 to 100. Based off of if you have 100 true fans or 100, loyal community members, you can charge them $1,000 over a period of 12 months, and that would allow you to make a living doing what you love. So, without further ado, the queen of Notion, fellow YouTube creator, Marie Poulin. Welcome.
Hello. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, for anyone who doesn't know you, anyone who hasn't binge watched your channel, I think anyone who is in the chat and has used Notion has seen you and is familiar with you. But for anyone else, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's always hard to know how to answer that because Notion sort of took over my life a couple years ago. So in the past, I used to consult with people who were launching online courses. And about 2-ish years ago, I kind of doubled down on Notion. So these days, most of my time, energy, and attention is spent on my course, Notion Mastery, which teaches people how to run their whole life and business out of Notion. And that's where the majority of my time and effort goes now. That's where my YouTube channel started, was just an attempt to introduce people to the concepts and kind of teach them small, bite-sized pieces of what to do in Notion. And then the idea was that they would want to go deeper and join my course. And so YouTube has become, I'd say 75% of my sales have come through YouTube. So it was not initially something I was expecting to be a big part of my strategy, but the sort of traction that happened was like, well, guess I better learn about this YouTube thing. So the rest is kind of history.
So, okay, let's dive into that a little bit more because I saw your, I go to everyone's YouTube channel and I press sort to oldest to newest. So I saw.
Cringe.
It's not
I'm
your
so
first
sorry
rodeo.
that you had to witness that. Yes.
So point is you've been on YouTube, you've had a YouTube channel for a while. And it looks like it took a lot of different evolutions for you to get to where you are. Kind of explain that journey. Maybe what you were thinking you were going to achieve when you first started YouTube. And then at what point did Notion come in? Was that as a result of YouTube? Or was it after? And then you were like, oh, I need to make tutorials on YouTube about Notion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I never took YouTube seriously, I think, until Notion. So before that, there was maybe a couple videos here and there that, you've probably seen some of them. I had done a few video challenges, 100-day vlogging challenge I did. So I wasn't taking it seriously. I knew that I wanted to get a little more comfortable in video. And so I had launched other programs in the past and, posted interviews with people and was just kind of dabbling a little bit with content, but it was never part of a strategy. It was never something I thought I would actually spend time doing. But once Notion came along, I think my very first sort of inkling that, okay, I should really take this YouTube thing seriously was I did a webinar on how to use Notion. And it was it was explosive growth. It was like I had never really done any list building or anything. Like I was not following any of the shoulds of marketing at this time.
Right.
I was. It took me 3 years to get up the courage to even to do a webinar on Notion. So when I finally did it and I saw how much traction that event got, and I had posted it to YouTube, I was like, oh, well, so many more questions came out of that webinar, and I was like, oh, I didn't have a chance to cover that or this. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to need to follow up. I'm going to need to kind of elaborate on this piece or that piece. And I just realized there was so much content potential. And I already had so many people DMing me on Twitter and asking me questions. And I thought, okay, I'm going to need to streamline this content creation process. And I'm going to need to be a little more strategic about it and use YouTube as a chance to answer those most common questions so that I'm not always answering people one-on-one. And people would be, again, Twitter messaging me. And I was like, well, rather than answer this for one person, I'm really going to have to.
Again.
Yeah. And so it kind of evolved organically. And I
Mm-hmm.
met someone at a mastermind who said, I think you need to double down and do it, like start a YouTube channel. And I was like, do I only want to do a YouTube channel about Notion? I wasn't sure. I thought it was a bit of a risk. And like, what does that mean for all the other work that I've done? I don't know. Do I want to be known as the Notion person? So I definitely rattled with that a little bit. And I was like, well, screw it. Let's just try it for a season. Like, what if I took the next 3 months and just did a video every week for 3 months? What would that look like? And the traction was so fast. It was just so immediate. And I was like, whoa, there's something here. And so it just kind of, it just took on a life of its own.
Okay, so all right. So at that point, you were now taking YouTube seriously, and it was something that you were like, okay, let's, you saw it as this could be a real tool for your business. Like you saw that correlation. Yep. So when you started to see traction, did your strategy change at all? Where, in terms of YouTube or even with business? Like, I mean, I guess my question is, at what point did you come up with Notion Mastery? Because did you have a place to funnel these people at this point?
Oh, yeah, good question. So I'd say like summer of 2019, I was starting to have people say like, if you make a course, I'll give you money. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, like there's a product, like there's something here. Okay. And I'd already been like showing my friends how to do it. So I knew I wanted to teach something. I knew I wanted to create a course. I launched the webinar in August. And I'd say by October, I launched the beta of my course. So already when I started to ship consistent YouTube videos around like September, I was doing it with the idea that I was going to be delivering something at some point. And I didn't know like what format it was going to take or like even the price point. So it was definitely I need to do this consistently and I need to answer these questions and I need to kind of build some authority around it, right? Like I knew to some extent I was going to have to be everywhere, even if it was for a short amount of time. So I was like tweeting about Notion. I was on YouTube about Notion and I was just starting to talk about it more. I was like, I know I'm going to have to get known as that person if I'm going to be making a sale, like asking for sales for my product. So
yeah. So when I checked your YouTube channel, you were at around 26,000 subscribers, which is awesome.
Thank you.
At what point, though, in terms of numbers, do you think that, or could you say like you were successful? And obviously, define it however you want. But like, we were talking before we jumped live that I want to advocate for a different kind of YouTube success that is outside of crazy massive numbers. So yes, you are very successful now, but at what point did things like click?
I mean, I partly feel like Notion is a growth cheat code a little bit because I think the number increases that you'll see on people who are talking about Notion are faster than maybe an average YouTube channel, I think anyway. So I was blown away even after a month. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like 100 people watching my, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like my standards were so low. I was like so excited to have anybody like, is this useful for anyone? So for me, I think what I felt was a measure of success is the kind of responses and comments I'm getting are people saying, holy crap, I didn't know you could do that. That saves me so much time. And so the more that I got that kind of resonance. I'm like, okay, this is actually creating a difference. Like, even if it's for a handful of people, that is amazing. So I think pretty early on, like, my mind was just blown. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe even like 100 or 1,000. So
Yeah.
every month it was like, oh my gosh. So videos that I made back in 2019 there are still some videos that are still the
Yeah.
most watched video. And so of July, 2021, it's like, and that one is still the most popular when you didn't have great equipment and your audio is terrible and you do things differently now, but it's still there on the internet and someone can
Yeah.
find it and be like, this is wrong or this isn't how you do it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
damn it. So it's hard to know when it felt like it was succeeding, but I just had a sense by the pull of the numbers and the engagement. I was like, okay, like there's something here. Obviously, when you're doing screen sharing with a software, video is going to be the best format for that sort
Yeah.
of thing, maybe more so than a long form blog post. So I was just willing to experiment with it. I treat everything in my business as an experiment. So I thought,
Mm-hmm.
what's the worst that can happen? Let's just double down on this. Let's see how it goes. And clearly I was like, well, this needs to be part of my strategy. So I need to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. So part of what I think I need to dive deeper on this podcast is the premium product thing. So
Mm-hmm.
talk about the birth of Notion Mastery, specifically the premium part, because I think everyone who is here and is watching this understands various different types of YouTube monetization. I mean, anything at this point, and there's so many tools and different things that you can put together and create and sell and all of those things. But it's the premium part that I feel like is hard to figure out because it's different for everybody. So what was that process like
Definitely.
for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can share I'm a big fan of launching in beta, right? Like, launch a pilot of your thing, launch hands-on with people, like make sure to launch something live even before you think about launching evergreen. So for me, I know when I launch a thing, I'm pretty hands-on with that group. So at first I thought, oh, if I can get like 10 people, yay. And I think it was
Like a live cohort?
209. Yeah, run a live cohort first. So live office hours, just you need a chance to kind of hear that feedback and kind of hear how the content is landing. So the first time I launched it, it was 297. I was like, I don't know, 6 weeks, 297. Like, let's see how this goes. And it was like hilarious to think that I thought you could teach that in 6 weeks. And what I realized is a lot of what I had come to in Notion was a result of my own habits and studying systems and like obsessing over productivity because I felt like a chaotic mess my whole life. So, I had obsessively read all these things and integrated all these different habits and they showed up in my Notion space, but just giving someone this fancy Ferrari setup is not going to make sense for them. It's not going to work for them if they also don't have those habits built. So I was like, oh, this is not actually just a course about Notion. Like, I realized I had to go into more detail about some of these other pieces. So it was like, okay, the scope kept increasing and kept increasing. And I was like, oh, like, what is included and what's not included? And it took a really long time for me to figure out, like, where did I want to draw those boundaries? And is this a beginner course? Is this an advanced course? Who is my audience? So I definitely went through like a good 6 months of like, I mean, even more, I'd say. Like, I still feel like I'm kind of iterating on it, but it took me a while to figure out the right price and the right format for sure. And so I kept experimenting. Every 100 people that signed up, I increased it $100 and another $100. And
Oh,
so,
I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if there's enough demand for it, I was like, okay, clearly it's like you have to listen to the feedback and people are like, oh my God, this is amazing. Or like, oh, it's missing this, right? And so you're just kind of getting a gauge on who is this really, really perfectly suited for, who's maybe not a good fit, how do I frame that? And I would keep taking their feedback and rework it back into the sales page and use people's quotes like right on the page. So it really felt like, oh my gosh, you're in my head. This course was exactly what I wanted. So it definitely is an iterative process. It takes some time to like, okay, at this price point, not as many sales are coming through. Okay, at this price point. So it's definitely taken a while to move to the price point that it's at now.
Yeah.
One of the things that really help with that too is like a lot of small entrepreneurs, and I don't know where you fall with this, but as you start to get on assistants, or maybe you're working with other people, maybe you have some operations support, you're often not just working alone in your space, you're bringing in other people. So we actually had like a tiny teams version where, hey, it includes access for you and one of your team members or a friend or something like that. So it was a way to
Oh,
get more people following through on the course and doing it together. So that was a pretty good strategy there.
yeah.
And as I mentioned before in our chat, like, I know I don't have the strongest boundaries. Like I know I have a bit of those people pleasing tendencies and I want to be in there with people and like supporting them, and office hours often go longer than an hour. Like I can't really help myself. I build that into my pricing, right? Like it is a premium product because I know I'm going to show up and I care so much about whether or not you get results. Like I really do care. And so I'm going to like send you that DM afterwards. I'm going to check in with you. I'm going to be with you in that process. So to me the
Yeah.
pricing kind of reflect how much time, energy and attention goes into it.
Were you pretty sure on an online course, and it sounds like you have a like a coaching component?
Yeah, like for me, I guess my background or past life before Notion was mostly in the online course world, and so we had a software for a while for course creators, and it was just kind of the space that I was immersed in. And so I've seen every iteration and format and type and price of online course behind the scenes. Like I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't work, I've seen behind the scenes of people's funnels. So it's been fun to learn about it from other people's courses, but then also having experimented with my own. And I want to be an excellent teacher. Like I feel like I have such respect for people that can teach and be excellent at that and like really help people. So that's something I'm still aspiring to, is like I want to be an excellent teacher and I want my program to be something that actually does help people reach their goals. So I knew teaching in some format was going to make sense. uh, my instructional style is probably a little more casual and exploratory, and so a coaching component I think makes a lot more sense for me. And I'm even like bringing in additional instructors, so people that have more of a more formal sort of instructional style and background, where they can deliver really specific workshops, and then I can be doing more of the office hours and the hot seat component. So hot seats are something I just think are the most fun thing to do. So people can submit their use case and be like, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to like manage my podcast workflow with my team of 5 people. So they submit it, they do a little Loom walkthrough, and then we do that live together, almost like a private consult, but that people can drop in on and watch. So I was like, that's more my style, is like on the fly, solving problems,
Yeah, that's
rapidly getting
fun.
it done. So it's like, I'm like, I can get paid to do this for people. Like, this is the most fun. So I'm a huge believer in like finding your natural teaching style, or finding whatever your natural style is and doubling down on it and not trying to fight it. I think I spent a lot of years beating myself up because I don't feel super well presented. Like I don't feel like uh, I accidentally swear sometimes. I can go off on tangents. Like I know it's maybe not the most linear process where like first we're going to learn X and then
Right.
my tendency is maybe like, oh, I get really excited and explore. And it takes a lot for me to like slow it down, Marie. Not everybody is at that level. Like you are going to have to set them through that process. So how can I design events for myself within the course that actually utilize the parts that I'm good at, or exploratory or problem solving on the fly, while also bringing in the support of people that can fill those gaps and can do that stuff really, really well. So it's been a process to like find what is the format of the course, what's the price, the style, and the types of events that are going to suit my natural way of being.
Yeah. So, okay, I have three follow-up questions with that. First is, um, when it comes to YouTube monetization, I feel like the most common ways, just for some reason, are super low tickets. You've got the $5 super chats, you've got, $10 t-shirt, we've got, $1 membership levels and stuff like that, which is all totally cool. But you cannot see success unless you have the volume of numbers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think the same, and I learned this the hard way because for my first online course, yeah, I totally, I was introduced to the world of online courses through Teachable. I went through and no hating on Teachable, I love Teachable, I just don't use them anymore. Um, but I went through in 2016, it was like a whole like online courses are the best. And I was like, oh my God, I'm totally gonna do this. I had no idea what I was doing. And I made a course and it was like 99 bucks. And like, it didn't even occur to me, like, oh yeah, you're gonna sell like hundreds, if not thousands, in order to like run a whole business off this thing. So,
Yeah.
how do you, I don't know, what do you think is the difference between like a $99, $200 course and then like several hundred, if not like 1,000 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, you're having to consider how expensive is this problem for someone to solve. And in what other ways are they investing to solve that problem already, right? Because it's not like someone is necessarily only solving their problem by signing up for other courses, right? So depending on what you do and what you teach, they might be buying books, hiring a coach, spending years and years banging their head against the wall. Like there's so many different
Right.
ways that people try to solve their problems. And so is your course solving one tiny problem? Is it solving a very expensive, painful problem that someone is willing to pay to solve right now? So I think pricing is an art, of course. It's like how much of their own time is required, right? Whether it's consuming the content of the course and like what is the depth of change, what's the level of change, and over how long. So I think it's an art to find what level of mastery are you looking to take someone through, over what time frame, and for what price point. So obviously, if there's a deeper transformation happening and there's a bigger promise, if you will, you can get away with charging a lot more, especially if you are a little more niche too, where it's like, oh, wow, there's not too many people solving that specific problem.
Yeah.
So there's like a time sensitivity factor, like how painful is this problem? And, there's an element of why now that I think sometimes people miss, where it's like, oh, I'll do that course, but I'll do it later. Well, why should someone do the course right now? Is it really clear why? There's a timeliness factor where it's like, stop feeling scattered, shit's falling through the crack. Like,
Yeah.
there's that shame, like productivity shame and things like that. But and so I have to address that even with my course, where people think Notion is going to solve productivity problems, but like if you bring your baggage from other tools into Notion, you're going to hit up against the same stuff, but now you've just taken longer to build your setup. So I have to address those in, like, that's where YouTube videos can be that
Yeah.
sort of bridge to that. Or so here's an example. Like I sell templates for $40 for $140. Like I have $140 template. So there's a chance for like, hey, you want the whole ready made for you system? How many hours would it take you to build this on your own? Is it a couple freelance hours? They're it's solving a really specific problem for folks. If you want all the underlying systems and the deeper change, like the long-term change that it's going to take you to know how to really operate the system day to day, well, that's a longer change. And change is hard for people. Like it takes time, it takes accountability. People are motivated for different reasons. So your product you have to find that match of like, is the pain and the change aligned with the perceived value? And that can take some focus group, right? Where you're like testing the offer with
Yeah.
people. But at a $99 price point, you're probably not directly involved with your
Yeah.
people, which then depends on their own motivation and their own willingness to actually follow through on that change. And that can be hard. So it's like, is the course lending itself well to people being able to do it on their own? And if not, and if they need additional support, well, how can you do that support in a scalable way, whether that's through office hours, through hot seats, through teardowns, coaching, group coaching, that sort of thing. So there's lots of creative ways I think you can provide support that kind of give it that perceived value, that don't require that like one-on-one time and attention with people.
Right, right, exactly. Okay, so this is a feature that I feel like is not um, immediately obvious when people think of online courses, and that is access to the course, right? Because people, when they buy Notion Mastery, they only have like a window, right?
A year.
A year.
Yeah.
So talk about that. Why do you limit it to a year?
I think it's really easy for people to say, oh, yeah, like I'll just do that later, right? And if you don't give them a little bit of a limit, it's really easy to procrastinate. So part of the limit too is the fact that if you buy the course, you get access to at least, there's 3 live events a week at least. Like there are so many different ways for you to get support depending on the type of support that you want. So like there is an element where I'm paying other coaches, I'm paying other instructors, I have my operations person full time. Like there's a team of people there helping. There's people in the community answering questions. We have people who answer way more technical, deeper formula related questions. It's like if you have any problem and you post it, you're like, how would I do X? You get your problem solved. So there is a cost associated with that from a team level. It's not just me providing that support. So there is an element of, okay, how many people can we support on a single call? And so I think putting some boundaries on that and saying, show up, you've got us for a year. That's plenty of time for you to get what you need. And I'm sure that we'll put other mechanisms in place where it's like, hey, your 12 months is up. Did you want to renew and stay in the community? Chances are at that point, you've done the work to get your setup pretty darn close. You've got access to all the templates and everything like that. So from there, it's just how many teacher hours are you using? And so we do have to kind of put some limits on that.
Yeah, I love that because that's not what I did when I first started.
That's how you learn, right? You're like,
lifetime access. Like, what crazy idea was that? Which is totally fine because my students are cool and it wasn't like something I sold to a million people. Okay, so the third thing I wanted to ask you is, I think when it comes to people who do educational, informational, tutorial-based channels and have online courses or educational type products, there is this like what goes in the course and what goes on the YouTube channel. So how do you figure out that dance?
I'm still figuring out that dance.
Yeah.
I love this question too, because it is such a sticky one, because course videos, I do think, are quite different than YouTube videos. And I think this is a difficult distinction. On YouTube, it feels like there's a rush to get to the point, and you have to be very, very well edited, or people are like, stop droning on about your life. I'm like, oh my God.
Video starts at 36 seconds or whatever.
Exactly. And it's like, people encourage you to be more story driven and not just be, giving the tutorial stuff. So I was like, okay, how do I make sure it's interesting? And there's different angles, but also, so there is like, you feel kind of rushed to like you have to plan your videos really carefully on YouTube, because again, they're almost more permanent, they're more public, they're out there, and it's kind of serving you even when you're not there. In a course, you have to slow down, and you actually do have to break things down in a lot more detail. And then there's also additional written detail as well too. So within a course, I think you have to give people more options, right? Whether it's downloading the transcript, or they can pause the video and they can read the stuff below. There might be a downloadable lesson or resource that goes along with the video too. So I think the approach is a little bit different. So to me, YouTube is like the teaser, it's the appetizer, it's a quick how-to, but it doesn't get into like the deeper system and the sort of, okay, but how and like, why do we do things this way? So for me, the YouTube is a little bit more how, and the course is a little bit more the why and the how combining together to create a much more comprehensive system. Yeah. But I do err on the side of like sharing more than I would expect to. So there will be some overlaps in concepts for sure between, it happens.
All right, guys. So if you are just tuning in, or if you missed the intro, this is Marie Poulin. She is fellow YouTube creator and creator of Notion Mastery, which is like the sidekick for all things Notion. And if you have any questions for her, please let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure that Marie answers them during our Q&A section. So just make sure to format your comment with a Q:, and I will get to it. Now, with that said, Marie, you talked about, do I want to make a YouTube channel that's just about Notion? Now that you're, further along on this journey, how do you feel about that? And I know even, because I was reading your personal mission statement, which is awesome, by the way, because it's so, you don't even use Notion. Do you know it off the top of your head? Your personal mission statement?
I don't.
Here, let me pull it up. So
but yeah, which one?
Give me a second, because it's I literally was like, oh my gosh, I need to show everyone an example of this. Marie is a life and business operations designer who helps business owners level up their digital systems, workflow, and product ecosystems so they can spend more time on what matters. So there's like, it clearly factors in the impact that you're getting, but then also the transformation that you are helping others achieve. And, you didn't mention Notion at all. So it's clear that, okay, yeah, Notion is a tool that helps you kind of achieve that. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So do you do that on your YouTube channel, or like, how do you feel about being known as like the Notion person?
I mean, I think that's definitely evolved over time. Like in the beginning, I wasn't really sure if it made sense to double down on it, or like, how does this fit in with my overall business? But I think what's been really fun is that when I did double down on it, it just became an entry point to a bigger conversation. So it's like, people sign up for the course expecting a course about how to learn software. And it's really more a course about how to manage your life and business in a more
Right.
organized way and intentional way. So I was like, okay, like Notion can just be like it's a teaser. I'm like, oh, hey, look at this like fancy dashboard. But really what we're going to talk about is this deeper thing over here. And so I love
Yeah.
that in a way, like slightly unexpected transformation. So to me, again, it's just another way to experiment with it's the inroad, it's the thing people think they want, but then they can go a little bit deeper, and that depth I think can maybe surprise people when they join the course. So that's exciting to me, is I still get to do what I'm doing. Notion happens to be that tool, but I'm not just like click here and here's how to add a new. It's like that's pre-recorded. Go through the pre-recorded videos. That's
Yeah.
fine. The office hours allow us to get a little bit more experimental, to have those bigger conversations about why we might approach something one way or another. So I'm like, this is ticking all the boxes. It's like problem solving. It's connecting with people. It's using my favorite tool. I'm like growing a team. I'm like, this is checking all the boxes. So I was like, yeah, I'll make some YouTube videos about Notion if this is like, if this allows me to
Yeah.
keep doing what I'm doing and love. And doesn't mean that I can't pivot and make other videos that are like how we manage our finances as a couple, where
Right.
like one of us is self-employed and the other works full time. Like there's lots of other conversations that I think wouldn't feel like a complete pivot. Like it's still
Mm-hmm.
all part of the same kind of bigger conversation. So I suspect I will experiment a little bit with like not only Notion tutorial videos and sort of have bigger conversations. But in the meantime, I don't mind being very specific with a few key, well placed Notion videos on YouTube, because it just pulls people into my ecosystem and my
Right.
sphere.
Yeah. Okay. So, now that YouTube is such a big part, like you said, 75% of your leads come from YouTube. Um, what are some, because there's just so much YouTube advice out there, uh, what actually works, right? Because I'm sure you've tried everything at this point. What would you say that actually works? And especially coming at it from like, the the people that are listening to this are trying to offer something eventually, like a premium product or service. So, is there
Yeah.
a difference with how you approach YouTube? What actually works? Stuff like that.
I mean, I can only share from my anecdotal
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience. And that's like, I'm not super metrics focused. Like, I don't, um, and I think maybe I have a little bit of a rebellious streak. So I don't, I don't follow don't follow many of the rules. I'm a big fan of experimentation and just like, what's going to get me shipping the videos, and also what is useful for other people. And I don't really care, for example, if like, oh, I want to experiment with a video that's a little bit more story driven and goes way into depth on something nerdy that maybe not that many people care about. I don't mind doing that. So I personally have no problem doing stuff that is like, oh, well, you shouldn't do. Like I just don't care. I'm not that driven.
I love that.
um, and it's like people can probably sense that. Like people can tell if you're interested in what you're doing and if you're not. And
Yeah.
so I think when I'm excited about what I'm doing and I'm recording videos on stuff I find really interesting, I think people can feed off that excitement and energy. So it comes down to some of the cheesy advice. It's just like actually be yourself. Don't try to put on a different persona like, oh, I've got my YouTube voice on now. It's like, be
Right.
yourself. You're a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with a premium product, there's more trust that needs to get built. And so are you making your values known through your videos? Like, is it clear? In some ways, because I always share my own space, I've had people say like it's very fascinating to see, like they're seeing my real projects, my real tasks, and my real values. And so even if it's not explicit, they're seeing how I think about the way that I plan and how I value my time. So there's like learning, there's like meta learning that can happen, I think, when you're open with your audience and you really share what really works for you. So
Your philosophy,
yeah,
your approach, yeah, like you said, your values, your personality comes through, and there's so much more of a connection than just like let's click here and add this formula or whatever. Um,
exactly.
yeah, so we've got some questions, but I do want to ask, what do you do anything outside of YouTube that helps the business?
Yeah, like I'd say Twitter and YouTube work really well together for me. Those are kind of the two channels that I'd say I'm most active on.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been doing the atomic essays, if anyone's been following that, like the
I'm
ship
a big
30 for
fan.
30.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been, that's uh, for me, I know consistency is something I've always struggled with. So if you go and look at my YouTube channel, you'll see these little bursts where it's like, oh, clearly
Same
like it
here.
was a video every week for 3 months, and then it was like none for 2 months, and then again.
Yeah.
And so I've been very inconsistent, but I was like, I need to build the muscle, and that's fine. And so I don't beat myself up about that. I'm like, this is just part of the process of figuring out what's my cadence and what's my flow and what's sustainable for me. And so if I'm burnt out, like it's just not going to happen. There's no need to force it or push it. So I was like, whatever, if you need to take a month off, take a month off. And so writing is something I've really wanted to improve overall. Like I want to sort of build that writing muscle. And then how can I also think about my content, that when I'm creating a piece of content, I'm creating a small essay about it, maybe I'm creating a YouTube video about it, maybe I'm writing a newsletter about it. Like how can I make sure that content is available in different formats and it for different types of people? Like some people like the quick hits, give me the essay. Some people want to go deep dive on a Notion video. There's so many different ways you can do that. So I really wanted to build up that writing muscle, and the Ship 30 for 30 was a really good practice. Like I can't believe I've written 24 essays in a row. It felt so impossible when you first think about it and hear about it, but it's been a chance to explore being a little bit more personal and touching on some more personal stories, and the connections and the traffic that have come out of that have been completely bananas. Like
Game changing. Yeah.
2.2 million impressions in the last
That's
28
crazy.
days. So I was like, I mean, it's even more, like in a way it's more than YouTube, but they
Mm-hmm.
can serve different purposes, and they get kind of consumed in different ways. So I think it's good to have more than like YouTube's great, but like, is there
Yeah.
another way that you can extract that value that you're creating on YouTube, and again have these little bite-sized snippets, or transcribe it and turn it into text-based interviews, and realize that people consume information in different ways. So I like the style and format of the quick hits of Twitter that also don't require me to be on video
Yeah. Be
all the
camera
time.
ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned before the stream that you haven't been uploading lately, which is totally cool. And I like how what one of the things that I really appreciate about people who do this like passion economy business model where YouTube is a part of it is that the approach is totally different from someone who, I mean, if you're trying to get as many numbers as you can't, you have to be consistent because your success depends on the numbers, the views, right? And subscribers. So,
Yeah.
but for you though, how do you approach whether something is a live stream or pre-recorded content? Or how would you approach that if you were like make a video next week?
So, and again, I could just share from my experience. Creating and editing videos is a very, very time consuming act. And it's, I don't know if this is different because it's with software too, but like I have to make sure that the workspace itself is as close to ready as possible. And you're like, okay, are the views ready? Like there's a little bit more prep involved in making sure I know what I'm going to say next and kind of how that's going to
Yeah.
go. So to try to minimize how much editing I would have to do after the fact. And it's hard for someone that doesn't know Notion to be editing my video. So it's a
Right.
process. So it takes a
Right.
lot more sort of time, energy, attention, focus. I really have to set that time aside and make the time for it. A live stream for me is so easy. Have a conversation with another interesting human being, amazing, cool. So sometimes I will just coordinate a live stream, even if we know the numbers are way lower. Like they don't tend to do what a video can do. It's a nice way to kind of still get your video stream filling up, and a way to just kind of keep your YouTube presence going, even if you don't have time to do those more like thoughtfully edited videos. So that's just what works for me personally. It's like, oh, it takes so much. I really gotta like psych myself up. I'm like, here we go. Like, gotta get this video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, I've been doing this 5 years. I totally feel the same. Okay, I'm gonna jump into the comments really quick. GovKid Method. How are you actively marketing your high ticket program? Do you recommend webinars?
I would say currently I'm not actively marketing my high ticket program. Well, I'm in a redesign process right now, so I've been like totally focused on curriculum redevelopment, and I would rather sing the course praises once I know that that's locked down and feels really good and solid. So in the meantime, I've been a little quieter with my marketing, but webinars are incredible, absolutely, especially if you're teaching. It's a great way to demonstrate your teaching style and your approach in a live video. If that's going to be what people are experiencing in the course, absolutely, I think webinars are such a great way to do that. Again, Twitter, like doing Twitter thread breakdowns of like, here's how I do my weekly planner, blah, blah, and like show these little screen caps of Notion. Like people are like, whoa, this is incredible. Where, I I take a very lazy marketer, like, I have a thing. If you want it, you can buy it. Like,
Yeah.
see it on my profile. I'm not in people's faces.
Yeah.
Well, because then I'm going to hungriest, most excited people who like went down the rabbit hole and watched every
Yeah.
video and like, what else has she posted? Right. So I'm a little more laid back in my marketing style. But if you are actively trying to grow your audience, obviously you have to be out there more and
Yeah.
give people options for how to consume your content. So webinars are great for high ticket programs for sure. Email marketing funnels, right? Um, Whether you have someone sign up for a webinar and then get them on your list and you're nurturing that, because people don't always buy the first time they hear
Mm-hmm.
about something from you. If it's higher ticket, they might need to get to know you a little bit better, like see more of your teaching style. You got to take a little bit more time with the high ticket stuff for sure. So
Yeah.
uh,
Here's another question by Tom Buck. How do you gauge success on YouTube? Do you have a specific goal, metric, etc.?
Tom, I've already surpassed my wildest dreams for and expectations for myself with regards to YouTube. So I'm like, I'm crushing it. This is great. Like I just can't believe like I have videos on YouTube. It's
Oh,
just taken so long to get over the fear of being on video. The fact that I have any and I'm doing it, I'm like so satisfied. So I'm not the most metrics driven person that way. I feel like, yeah, I have a successful YouTube channel. It's going to get better. I will keep refining my equipment. I will refine my style and kind of figure things out. So I feel um, I did
yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
it.
And then Filmtopia, how much time do you recommend investing into external social media outside of YouTube? And when did you start implementing Twitter for yourself?
So I've been on Twitter for so long, I don't even know when I first signed up for Twitter.
Oh, you met your
I met
husband
my
on
husband
Twitter.
on Twitter.
Yeah.
I did. And that was, I mean, I don't even know, back in, no, earlier than 2008. So like I've been on Twitter
Oh,
for so
wow.
long. That was really one of my first major social media platforms. And I'd say even before Twitter, when I was first really growing my business and thinking about courses, I was super active on Facebook and in Facebook groups. And that was honestly how I built my very first following. Like the first course I ever launched was in 2015. It was Digital Strategy School. It was a program for designers to learn how to do digital strategy and to get bigger clients. And it was more of a mentorship program. So it was like a $4,500 mentorship program where like you get one-on-one time, you get
Oh, that's
group
awesome.
time.
Yeah.
It was like a hybrid model of like part course, part resource library, part coaching, and a Facebook group. So I was very, very active in a Facebook group for many years when I was kind of finding my footing. Obviously, Twitter has a different. I feel like each social channel is kind of like a different country. They each have a
Mm-hmm.
different vibe. They've
Yeah.
got a different rules, right? Different intricacies and different types of people that are there. I think the most important thing is, where are your people looking to solve their problem? Like, are they searching on YouTube? Are they just going into Google and being like, how to do egg? Like, how problem aware are people and how solution aware? Like, there is sort of every product has a different level of this, right? And not everybody is aware that there is a solution to their problem necessarily. So it's about being aware of where people looking for it, where are they already finding solutions, are there books that they're reading that kind of overlap with what you want to teach. Like, you have to be a little tuned in to how people are already solving that. Are they in forums talking about it? Lots of different ways. And I think you have to experiment a little bit in the beginning. Like podcast interviews are so great. People,
Yeah.
oh, I like heard you on that podcast and I signed up for your course. So that's great too. But that might not be the case for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is as charismatic on video, or not as good of a writer. And so we kind of have to find, I think, what's our online personality and where do we best show up and that sort of thing. So
As
it's going to be a little bit
ourselves.
different for,
Yeah. Totally.
yeah.
Okay, I got two more questions, but we still have a few more minutes, guys. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Here we go. I think a big part of the passion economy and being able to start a business, build a business in today's digital age are the tech tools, right? Because literally you can be a one-woman business owner. Now you have built out a whole team, but you because of all these tools that exist now, it's like you can just run it all by yourself. So what tools are like in your tech stack? Like, oh my gosh, I swear by these. I love these tools. Aside from Notion.
This other than Notion, yeah, Notion's the big one. Zapier, we use Zapier for a ton of automations. Recently using Tally. So if anybody it's forms that integrate right into Notion too. So all of our student onboarding and survey forms and check-in forms all happen through Tally, because then that goes and integrates right with Notion. 1Password for sure for password management, Dropbox for file storage, BusyCal for calendar. Like just looking at my computer here, I'm like, what else do I use? Descript for auto transcribing videos and stuff like that. I'm sure you probably have your own like preferred tools on that front.
Yeah,
Those
I'm
are
a
some
big
of
fan of
the
Descript.
main
I
ones.
use it
Yeah.
frequently. I didn't think I was gonna like it as much, um, but yeah, the burned in captions and transcribing, it's like, oh my gosh, I love how
Remove
fast
those
this is
ums and
now. It's
ahs.
crazy. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
um,
Um,
Wistia for like video hosting for courses and stuff.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. And my last question is, you're a content creator yourself, you're an online business owner, you work with a bunch of entrepreneurs. Are you seeing any trends in terms of how people are doing business, especially like after
Mm.
2020? I mean, Notion, I think I heard about Notion in 2019, but it seems like it's really supercharged entrepreneur world, or at least like the world that I follow. So, I
Yeah.
mean, in trends in terms of anything, like, are you seeing anything from where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly courses, I think, are going to become more common. I think the same way it's like, oh, everyone's got like their email funnel. You'll have people, probably a lot more people having courses for sure. The add-ons onto Notion are huge, right? People building entire SaaS companies off of one extension, like, oh, make Notion do X. There's so many different little like micro companies and products popping up around this stuff. Like already, there's 3 different software tools that integrate to help Notion host online courses, right? So the fact that you're like, oh, okay, there's all sorts of stuff popping up here. Another interesting trend, I think, is the rise of the course manager and course operations person. So what Georgia does for me as my
Mm-hmm.
director of operations, like as soon as you launch an online course, especially a premium one, there's so many moving parts, as you know, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I didn't realize. Like now there's customer support, now there's operations, there's like hosting, there's just 1,000 things you don't even think about, marketing and sales. And so who's helping you glue all those pieces behind the scenes and keep that humming along so that you can be the creator and be the face and that sort of thing. So there are these interesting roles that I think are kind of emerging now that a lot more
Yeah.
digital businesses are doubling down on online courses. And you'll see interesting new job postings, and even like Tiago, it's like a director of content for building a second brain. Like you can start to see these new
Mm,
roles emerge, people that maybe didn't quite have a name before, or just looks a little different now that it's all happening online. So I think there's going to
yeah.
be even more stuff that doesn't maybe have a title. It used to be virtual assistant, but now it's like a virtual assistant that has way more knowledge in terms of how the operations of a
Is
course
more
happen.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we got a couple questions here in the comments. Boop. Sicktastic. I remember Marie from the Indie Hacker interview. Did your previous audience pre-Notion help bring in leads to your Notion success? That's a great question.
Yeah, probably yes. Because yeah, I have had people ask me that. They're like, how did you kind of come out of nowhere with the Notion stuff?" But in a way, I wasn't starting from scratch, right? Like I had success with a previous course, and my audience was probably a lot of designers and people in like web design industry and that sort of thing. So in some ways, my audience shifted. Here's an interesting trend that has kind of changed. My audience was 99% women before Notion. And now it's
Oh.
probably more like 70-80% men.
Oh,
That's a really
wow.
interesting shift, right?
Wow. Yeah.
It was like all the people that had purchased my course, there was maybe two gentlemen, and the rest were mostly like women designers. And so I was used to working with a lot of women, and it's just it's just interesting how the vibe is different, or the types of comments you might get are different, and so that's been kind of an interesting observation. So
Are they mostly online entrepreneurs as well? would you say?
Yeah, like, yeah. Oh, that's an interesting question because there are definitely people that work at teams, like they either work somewhere in a
Oh, I
team and
see.
they are trying to
Right.
bring notions to the team,
Right.
or they are self-employed or maybe like working for a nonprofit and that sort of thing. So I'd say it does seem like more of the women are self-employed. It's just kind of an interesting trend. Um,
Yeah. I mean, because I was
yeah.
I was mentioning to you before we started that you're my first female guest, and I mean, this is something that Tom and I we talk about this all the time because throughout my entire journey of being on YouTube, I have always felt, not so much anymore, but I've always felt like I was the only female creator in the room. Oh my god, especially in those first 3 years, like even going to VidCon, I would go to talks, and I was like, how am I
Oh
the
yeah.
only person, like the only female in here? Um, and so I was like, is that an online business thing? I get for a myriad of reasons it's harder, I guess, for women to jump on camera. I don't know.
Mm,
It's still something I'm exploring, but
yeah, I mean I feel like that's a whole
yeah, that's
hour-long
another
session we could
that's
do on
another
that one,
episode.
but it could be a conversation for another day. But yeah, even sometimes the comments that you might get are about like your appearance and not about what you were teaching, and
Yeah.
that stuff happens, of course, too. So I do think you need a thick skin,
Hmm.
or if you want to get a thick skin, start a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely a thing.
Roxanne, super chat. Thank you so much. I had an aha moment when Marie mentioned the difference between the
Awesome.
why and the how on these different platforms. I'm definitely more of a why person.
Mm.
That's great.
And like finding
Um,
the blend of that too, right? Like that your videos have just enough why
mhm.
and the how. And I've heard some people say this with blog posts where it's like the blog post is the why, but then the opt-in where it's like, oh, if you want to know how
It's
to
the
do this or you want
how.
the resource to do this, then it's the how. So I think it's worth experimenting with what your audience, like what's the teaser for your audience? It might be a little bit different.
Yeah. Filmtopia, what types of YouTube channels are you subscribed to? What do you consume? Do you produce content similar to what you watch or opposite of what you watch? And does that help or hurt you and your content in any unique way? That's a great question.
I have to admit, I don't watch a ton of YouTube videos. Like
Yeah.
unless I'm solving something specific, like I don't know, my plants leaves are turning yellow. How do I do this? So
Yeah.
I'm actually not a huge video content consumer. Like I actually do more reading and extracting from books and audiobooks and that sort of thing. So not a Becky and Chris is one of those channels. I don't know if that's the name of their channel, but like,
Yeah.
just beautiful videos. Obviously, follow yourself and Tom. Anything that's sort of like how to improve your overall video quality. But there's not a ton. Partly to the second part of that question is like I've had people ask me like, oh, in like August's video where he does X. I'm like, I actually don't watch a lot of other Notion creators' videos. I
Yeah.
don't like. There's so many out there, and I don't want to get tripped up by,
Yeah.
oh well, they're doing it this way, and it's like no, you eyes on your own paper, keep
Yeah.
producing your value, and so it's
Totally. I
like
have been
I'm
down
very
that
totally
road.
supportive of it. Love sharing other people's stuff. I will literally
Hmm.
buy other Notion creators templates and stuff just to support them, to be like, you're awesome. Like I know
Yeah,
how it
because
feels to get that sale. Like it's
yeah, that and like all ships rise with the tide, I feel like, like
exactly.
you guys are, it is a small niche, it might feel like there's the dominant ones, but there's still so much to go around. So,
Well, and every
different.
YouTuber has a different
Mm-hmm.
approach,
Mm-hmm.
and we resonate with people differently. And I totally get that. Like I've seen people post on the Facebook Notion stuff. It's like she's really annoying. I'm like, awesome. Like have a great
God.
day. Like you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
okay, that's okay. People, not everybody's gonna like your style, and
Right.
some people will specifically be drawn because they're like, I like that there's a woman voice in the space. That
Mm-hmm.
like I've had both men and women tell me that too. So in some
Mm-hmm.
ways being a woman in a male dominated space, it like has its own advantages too. So it's just kind of interesting that there is room for all sorts
Yeah.
of different creators in
Yeah.
the same niche.
Oh, yay, my client and friend Dominique Henderson made it. He's been a huge fan of yours. I found her from Tiago's blog. My question is, what did she have to give up to get to this level? What were some of the sacrifices you've had to make?
Oh, that's what a great question about sacrifices. I mean, you have to ruthlessly prioritize, right? Like if you want something badly enough, then you have to say no to other things. What did I sacrifice? I definitely sacrificed a ton of evenings and weekends building my product and head down doing the work for sure. Um, like my email marketing suffers when I am really actively producing videos. When I'm doing a daily essay, YouTube is suffering. Like to me,
Right.
it's really difficult. You can't really do it all. So you're kind of just choosing like, okay, what's the hot potato
Which
right
plate
now?
to
What's
spin?
most
Yeah.
important?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of work to get to the point where it feels easy. Like
Yeah.
it's more streamlined now. It's a more mature product, but holy moly, to get there, it is definitely uh, yeah, sacrificing friendships, sacrificing like
Yeah. I mean,
relationships. I'm like,
I've
sorry,
been there
honey, I
too.
got.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, I appreciate that question.
GovKid Method says, my current community lives on Facebook. Facebook changes and showing posts has nearly
Mm.
killed it. Do you recommend jumping elsewhere for community? My focus is on rolling for my premium product, so I'm torn. Do you have a
Oh
Facebook group?
man, I avoid Facebook. I don't enjoy being on there, and I don't really spend much of any time on there. Even though that
Yeah.
used to be the place where I spent the majority of my
Right.
time. And again, there is that element where Facebook controls a narrative, or they have a lot of control over what gets shown and what doesn't get shown, right? So
Yeah.
that is an element for sure when you don't uh,
Mm-hmm.
own
Mm-hmm.
your property that way. So I don't think it's necessarily about jumping elsewhere, but like, is there somewhere else that you can supplement and not put all your eggs in one basket in terms of having only one channel. So that's why I like to experiment with even like Instagram is a little more personal. It's like a little story driven. And, YouTube is going to be a little more how to tutorial style. And Twitter might be a little bit more like creator economy, business advice, like
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, what I'm up to, and little like mini deep dive threads. It's like, what are the different ways you can just get maybe different audiences? Like, I'm sure there's tons of people that are not into Facebook that like want what you're solving for. So where are
Yeah.
they currently hanging out, and where are they seeking that information? So um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's worth experimenting with other platforms too, I think.
Yeah. That's a great question. We are in the process of building a mighty network. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So we should be
Any
launching.
thoughts
Actually,
on?
I'm gonna have the CEO Gina as my guest next Tuesday.
Oh, very
So
cool, very
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
I'm very excited. I think I've looked around, and to me, it's the best platform that mimics the best part of Facebook groups without the Facebook,
Yeah.
and allows you to
Yeah.
have your own, almost like your own social media network, because it has an app. So it like feels very mobile friendly. It allows you to direct message people. People can have profiles. You could do, threaded comments and topics and all of that. So it's just, I'm really excited about it. Um,
Yeah, that's honestly what a lot of my clients used in the past. Like that
oh
was sort
yeah,
of one of the more common ones, that it's like a good course community combination
yeah,
platform.
yeah. Okay, so here's my last question. Um, let's talk about Notion for just a second. Specifically, because I have ADHD, and my first Marie video was a video of you showing your sister who has ADHD how she could use Notion.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still in like a couple of groups that are like for ADHD entrepreneurs and stuff like that. And actually, one of my most popular videos on my vlog channel is about like entrepreneurship with ADHD to this
Wow.
day. Like,
Yeah.
it's a video from like 2016. So, why Notion? Like, why is that a tool? Because I've done Todoist and like all the other ones, Evernote, everything. I'm a big fan of Notion, but how would you describe it for someone who has ADHD tendencies?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that was missing for me before is the ability to see day-to-day actions and also long-term strategic planning in the same place. So it
Hmm.
sort of felt like doing Asana or Todoist or whatever. It's like it's very boots on the ground, what's right in front of me right now, what's on my calendar. Uh, and then I'm doing my strategic planning in these like Evernote documents, and it sort of felt like paper planner, like everything kind of felt scattered, and it just didn't feel very integrated. Like better prioritization. How do you manage the multitude of different projects that we all have on the go? And so it just felt very piecemeal. And so for me, I've created these incredible dashboards in Notion that allow me to like zoom in or out at any time scale and see every database. Like I can see my goals database at a daily level, weekly level, or quarterly level. And it's only going to show me what's most important in that moment. So the sort of like guardrails that it allows me to put on myself as someone who likely also has ADHD, has been incredible. Like I've just never
Yeah.
seen another tool like it. And so I think the control aspect is part of it, is like controlling what is seen, reducing distractions, removing the number of clicks that you have to move through the different pages.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't realize you can bring data into the same page. So I have
Mm-hmm.
like pretty complex pages that can show me if I'm doing project planning. I don't just want to see that project. I need to see, well, what's coming up down the pipeline. What's up, like
How does it fit
there's
into the
many.
whole thing? Yeah.
Exactly. Mission statements. Like I can have a mission statement above and have my goals and to dos. Like I can remix the information in a way that works for my brain. And I think there's something so like powerful and empowering about that, that it's like, oh, it's not that I'm just a scattered mess and I'm screwed no matter what tools I use. It's like, oh,
Right.
I didn't have a tool that actually aligned and supported the way that my brain works. And now that I can, I'm like, oh, it's like something clicked and there's like, oh, there's peace. Like, oh my gosh, this is
Yeah.
I hadn't had that experience before, so it was like singing it from the rooftops. I was just like, "Have you heard the
Yeah.
good word?" Like I was just so excited about it.
Well, see, that's what I think that's the takeaway here is like, for people who are, content creation, you're trying to apply this passion economy business model. I think the hardest part is figuring out what the thing is that you're going to sell because likely it doesn't exist, right? So, Marie created a one of a kind solution based off of a product that is relatively new and now is, having transformational impact on people who are building whole businesses and redesigning their lives and being able to set and achieve goals and stuff like that. And it is just so much it's just so much experimentation. And when it comes to Notion, man, like I totally remember, okay, I've got my long-term goals on like in a journal, right? Because that's like, okay,
Yep.
it's like New Year's or like new quarter and I'm gonna be all thoughtful and write in a journal because pen and pencil. And then I would open up like my notes app of like, okay, here's like the bullet points of what I need to get done today, and there was no connection between the two.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so if you haven't given Notion a try, definitely like go check out Marie's channel. She, I'm sure you have playlists and like, because I know it can be
Yeah.
intimidating. I mean, even Tom has like
Hugely,
tried to
yeah.
dip a toe and like, what is this?
Yeah, my
um,
advice is like to solve one specific use case first. Like what's the
yeah.
part of your workflow that has the most friction? And I usually tell people stick with the more passive stuff. So it's like stuff that you don't need to update every, like task management in Notion
Yeah.
is a thing, but having a wiki where it's like things that you need to just access for reference or tool
Mm-hmm.
databases with links, like anything like that, starting really small. But yeah, to your point about it's like finding the red thread that ties all of your experience together that makes you the only person to kind of teach this in this way, like whatever that thing is you're creating. So you don't see it when you're in it, but looking back, I'm like,
Right.
oh, there's a reason my course is formatted the way that it is. My beliefs are baked into it. Like all of it is a summary of like the 10 years that you've been experimenting and courses that you've taken, mentors that you've had, things you've tried that worked. And you're going to find your unique weird way of teaching and delivering that thing that only you can do. And so don't try to be like just following all the marketing shoulds and whatever. It's like you got to
Yeah.
find that thing that pulls your, again, we all have really, really unique backgrounds and experiences because of the people we've encountered and the things that we've done. And so bring all of it to the table, bring all of it. It's going to make your course stand out.
I love it. I love it. Great way to end. Marie, where can people find you?
Just Google my name in Notion, mariepoulin.com, or you can find me on
On
YouTube,
YouTube.
Twitter. Those are the main ones that
Yeah.
you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Marie, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your experience, and thank you for what you do. Because seriously, like I've talked to so many people, your everything that you do has had, I mean, like literally my accountability partner and I talk about you all the time. It's really, you've really made an impact. And I'm sure you know that, but female creator and female entrepreneur to another, thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys. I hope you had a good time here. Definitely check out the replay if you missed the beginning, and we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.